So we're doing a series on wisdom, and if you missed last week, then you need to go back and watch it because I set the whole platform up for the next 3 weeks. This is a series called Equation Smoke and Horses, and it opens up the wisdom literature in the Old Testament scriptures to show us how wisdom works in that text and what it means for us today. And so again, I'm not gonna recap. I am just gonna say, it's all online. Go back and watch the message, and you're going to get plenty out of what we talk about today. But last week is an important part of it. So go ahead and do that. We're at that stage, my wife and I, of parenting where there's a constant solicitation for new things, new toys, new shoes, new, whatever. I mean, just this constant stuff on Amazon, whatever it is, it's just a constant, I want to get this, and now I got this, and now I got my eye on this. I think it's one of the many probably negative sides of the kids, even seeing YouTube kids and being around other kids, and they just see all this stuff. They're just exposed to way more. When I was a kid, it was like if you watch G.I. Joe on TV, then there's one commercial about those new dinosaur toys, and then everybody wants those. But now they get like 17 commercials, and they have their own kind, and there's an algorithm to show them which one they should want. And so here we are going, this is a constant want. But there are times when, most of the time we're just like, stop it. We're not doing that. We're not gonna always just get you every little thing you want. But then there are times when our kids, they get really serious about something. And it's like a thing. It's like a calm kind of request, like I've really thought this through. And then it's persistent, right? It kind of shows up. And our middle son, Jet, is kind of in that phase right now where he just wants to make his room more unique for him. And so like 2 or 3 months ago, he asked for a mini fridge. He wants a mini fridge. He's like, I want my own milk. And he's like, I want to put, stuff in the freezer, and I want to be able to just get it and do it. He just had this thing, and we're like, okay, Jet. So, he just went after it. And then he started to get into wanting this projector in his room. And so we're driving to basketball the other night, and again, he brings up the projector, and he starts talking about what it could be. And at times he's middle child, so we really try to make sure he feels heard more than the other ones, because if we don't pull it out of him, then he'll just drown with the other two's voices and, eclipsing them. And so when he kind of gets into something, we want to make sure that we kind of bring real attention to it. And so he started going on about this projector again. And then I was like, okay, I'm looking at it. He shows me this thing on Amazon. He's 11, and he's showing me this thing. And I was like, this is really cool. It's under $100. I'm like, this thing is pretty sweet, and you can just Bluetooth to it, and you can HDMI to it. And I'm like, huh. And then it just hit me like, you know what? No, we're not doing TVs in your room. You already have your screens. You're not supposed to have your screen in your room at night anyway. So I'm kind of like, no, I don't think so. And he kind of went to bed, and you could tell his little heart was kind of crushed, right? And he had been asking and asking and asking. And then when I put real thought into it, the answer was no. And he didn't like that. So the next morning, as he leaves the house for school, I check my email for the first time, and I got an email from Jet. And it says this: Dear Dad, literally, I believe that I should be able to get the Pure projector because first, I will need my phone to watch a movie, and secondly, it is cheap. Read on to learn more why I should be able to buy the Pure projector. I believe that I should be able to have the Pure projector because I need to have my phone in order to watch a movie. This is a belief of mine because if I put my phone downstairs at night, then I won't be able to watch a movie. In addition, if I don't have my phone, I will not be able to watch anything at all. This shows that you will know if I am on it at night because you will see my phone downstairs. In the end, I believe that I should be able to have the Pure projector in my room because I cannot watch anything whatsoever without my phone. It's like a very airtight, thesis statement here that he's created. Secondly, I believe that I should be able to buy the Pure projector because it is cheap. To add on, you can tell he just learned all these phrases in ELA or whatever it is. To add on, the Pure projector price is only $100, which is a cheap find for a good working projector. Also, the projector had a bit over a 4-star status, demonstrating that most people have enjoyed using this product. In addition to the product is only $100. In the end, I believe that I should be able to get the Pure projector because it is affordable. He opens up with his 2 points, 2 paragraphs each about each point. In conclusion, you have seen why I believe that I should be able to get the Pure projector. Reasons being, it is only available to work if I have my phone connected. Also, it is affordable. It's an affordable gadget that works really well. In the end, I hope you take this into consideration, Jet. I was just like, wow. So I responded back. At first I just wanted to kind of hug him and be like kind of proud, but I didn't. I engaged him. I responded with an email. And I said, this is an interesting idea. I said, but it assumes that you are going to be more consistent about putting your phone on the charger downstairs at the right time. Can I assume that? Just straightforward. He comes home, he's like, yes, I will do it. He's like, that night, he's like, Dad, see? So the moral of the story is, I bought it for him. I'm like, if a kid wants it that much and he goes after it, I'm gonna give it to him. What in the world? He's thought it through. He's been persistent. He's been consistent. We know with kids, sometimes they just, it's a flash in the pan. And we all have rooms of our kids' flash in the pan toys that we end up giving away. And it's such an interesting reality that we see. And what my hope and prayer for Jet is that at some point he craves God that much, and he craves wisdom that much. And that's actually what the scriptures say, is that we should want wisdom more than anything in the world. And I think if we all went after wisdom the way that Jet was going after a projector, then, we would be different humans. Have we shown that type of measure? It says in Proverbs 2, verse 3-6, indeed, if you call out for insight and cry aloud for understanding, and if you look for it as silver and search for it as a hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and find the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom from his mouth, come knowledge and understanding. If you seek it, you're gonna get it. And so the purpose of this series is to show us what God has made available to us for all who want to understand life and live it well, because the book of Proverbs is a book about helping us live well. And those who engage in the wisdom that God has made this world with and offered to us are the ones who are the masters of how this world works. We're reading the book of Proverbs throughout this month. We started last Sunday, and that means that today we'd be reading Proverbs chapter 8. And the way that Proverbs is set up is that the first 9 chapters of the book are these speeches, if you will, about seeking wisdom. And then the rest of the chapters are all about the different specific pithy sayings that are these little wisdom realities. And those sayings from that point on, they address almost every topic under the sun you could think of: life and character and judgment and relationships and work and speaking and wicked people and righteous people and money and sex and morality and all of these things. It really does, these sayings just cover almost everything that you could think of. And in Proverbs 8, which we're reading today, it talks about how God used wisdom to create the world, right? And that it's part of his attributes. It's part of who he is, and that he used it to make the world basically like a blueprint. It's like there's a part of himself that naturally has this order and design, and he used that part of himself to make the world with wisdom. And so the idea of wisdom is that we find specifically in the book of Proverbs when it's talking about wisdom, this word chokmah, which is this attribute of God, which has a design pattern. It's like the grain of wood. Wisdom is like a grain of wood, and anyone that works with wood knows you can go with the grain or against the grain. The way that God made the world is it has a pattern. It has a rhythm. And so you can go with it or you can go against it. And when you go against it, it's not wisdom. You're a fool. Honestly, it's a little bit like the Force in Star Wars. It's there, it exists. You can't see it, but it exists. The only downside, it's not exactly like the Force because the Force has a dark side. And really the dark side of wisdom is just when you're a fool and you're not using wisdom, right? When you're not using wisdom, it's like, oh, you didn't tap into this free-flowing reality that God has put into the world that speaks to every facet of the world that we live in. So the thing about wisdom that's so I think fascinating is that it is this grain, it's this pattern in the world, kind of the way that it works, and it finds itself in the material world, but also in the moral world. And so what God has done is he's created a grain for the way things work materially and also morally, good and bad, righteous, unrighteous. And so the two of those things together, as they grow, become wisdom. What we see is that we live in a moral world, and when you kind of go against the moral part of the way God made things, then you are kind of experiencing the result of chokmah or wisdom not working. An example might be, you might be a really good businessman. Like maybe you make a widget, and you make a great widget. And maybe you are really great at leading an organization and it's scaled and you're in the black. And so that would be is that is a part of wisdom. It's the material world. It's just the way things work. Like you understand setting up systems and you understand maybe something about different pieces of the world, different kind of raw materials and different engineering and ingenuity and then how to systematize that and package it and all that, and you can build a team around it. And someone might go, that's wise. Just similar to like the way a carpenter could take wood and turn it into a beautiful piece of furniture. That's wisdom. You're tapping into, like God put that in there. So anyone can kind of tap into wisdom, but where you can go wrong and then suddenly you don't have wisdom is, let's say that you're really great at all those pieces, but you treat your employees poorly. You underpay them, you speak bad about them, you belabor them, and then suddenly it doesn't work anymore. Or let's say that you're good at the company part, but you cheat on your taxes. God would say, that's not wisdom. That's not wisdom. And so there's this progression in wisdom. And wisdom kind of shows us what's going on in the world, how to interpret things, how to look at things. And so it tells us these realities that we're looking at today called equations. And one thing to know about them is that they're just probabilities, right? They're not promises. Proverbs are probabilities, not promises. There's a grain, and if you go with it, most of the time, this is the way it's gonna work. For example, here's a proverb that gives us an insight into how wisdom is a probability, but not a promise. It says this in Proverbs 4, listen, my son, accept what I say, and the years of your life will be many. Now that is not a promise. God is not saying that every time if you do everything that God says, that it will go and you will have a long life. But 97% of the time, that's exactly true. We all know someone who has done everything right. They love God, they love people, and then tragedy happens. And God gives us a lens for that in other wisdom books, which we're gonna look at. But here it is. You can see it. So you kind of go, okay, 97% of the time, these probabilities work. So it's not okay to sit there and go, yeah, but it doesn't work 3% of the time, so I'm not gonna trust in it. That would be ridiculous. Because God is saying that he's offered this wisdom to you, that it's designed for you to work, and that it is the best way to live your life, so you should tap into it. And so we're calling that an equation, right? We're saying that in reality, you kind of have this natural A plus B equals C. It kind of like adds up, and it's almost like kind of common sense when something happens the way it does. And if we could see the world that way, then we would go, oh, okay, I don't know why I was so mystified as to how I got into this situation or why this worked so well, because you did it. It's just God gave you wisdom, you tapped into it, and there's the success. Or God gave you wisdom and you were unrighteous and there's the folly and there it is. You didn't tap into it. Proverbs, what it is the Proverbs show us how God has made wisdom and how the world works, and it's available to everyone. Some say this, I alluded to it, that Proverbs are common sense, but we all know that common sense is not that common. Most people's lives would be radically different if they simply understood these basic pithy sayings. Radically different, like totally different. And I've talked about that I when I meet with people and they kind of go, I don't know why all this stuff is happening. And then you strip away the emotion from it. And after that's been expressed and we've kind of got to that point and we're healthy emotionally, now we go, so let's look at the rationality behind how you got in this predicament. And it's usually very, very simple stuff. It's like, well, I did X. Oh, and that led to this? That's why we're here. That's why we're here. And again, one of the realities of that is that we oftentimes don't take the power and the responsibility that we have seriously enough. That we are the ones that, we go into the world, and if life is really about 10% what happens to you and 90% of how we respond, we often get hung up on the 10%. And then we can go, God, why did you let this happen? And he goes, no. I gave you wisdom. You didn't use it. This is what happens when you do that. Here's where we were led today. So what we see is that the scriptures teach us that the beginning of wisdom in the Proverbs is the fear of God. The fear of God is the beginning of wisdom. So over the next couple weeks, I'm gonna kind of show you guys a progression here. And what this is gonna show us is how there's a beginning part of fear or of wisdom. And then as it grows, it turns into something holistic and much more robust. But fearing God is the beginning of wisdom. The beginning of wisdom is this: just understanding that there is a way that the world works best. So this word for fear does not mean the kind of fear that you might think. It's not having an intimate relationship with God. It's not necessarily fully understanding God or knowing God. It's having a basic respect in the most simplistic form that there is a way the world works, and you've tapped into that. For example, you can start to tap in and use wisdom. If you are a brain surgeon, then you went to school and you understand the intricacies of the way the human brain works. You understand how to open it up, and you can tap into the wisdom of God to help bring somebody to a place of relative healing compared to what they were before you had surgery. Now, a person that's doing that has, I would say, the beginning of wisdom. They understand, at least to this level, there's an answer to how this works. I don't know it, and I gotta find it. It's outside of them. Now, as this fear grows, it becomes the kind of fear that God wants all of us to have in an intimate relationship with him, which is not the kind of fear that makes us so afraid because if we don't do what he says, we're gonna get in trouble. It's the opposite. It's the kind of fear that makes us love and respect God so much that we're drawn near to him. Kind of like a marital relationship. Like you have a certain measure of respect and trust for your spouse that you love them so much, their ability to hurt you, to wreck your heart, it doesn't keep you away from them. You know they have it, but you want to be close to them. They have a lot of power that you don't, but you love them so much you're drawn near to them. And the more we draw near to God, the more we learn how God made the world, how it works, and we gain wisdom. So this idea here is like, it can't be the kind of fear that we're like, afraid of God, like, oh, he could destroy me. It's so much more than that. Of course, God can hurt you, just like your spouse could hurt you. But you're drawn closer to that because you honor them, you believe in them, you want to experience intimacy with them, and so you have this respect for them. One way to think about the fear of the Lord in the beginning of it is this idea that you really honor that person. You take them seriously. So think about it. If you don't take someone seriously, is that honor? Is that fear? Like if you met a celebrity or you met someone that you really revere and you didn't take it seriously, you didn't dress appropriately and you didn't look them in the eye and you acted wild and did some kind of thing or said something that was rude, then everyone would go like, you obviously don't know who you're talking to. So this type of fear, it starts off with a basic level of humility, right? When we're young, and it goes, there's answers to the way the world works that you don't know. You wanna learn how to build furniture, you wanna learn how to build a house, you have to tap into a reality that exists outside of you. And now you're using wisdom. Look, you have great skill. You could build that house. That's great wisdom. Now as we fear God, the moral part catches up, our intimacy with God catches up, and wisdom in the way the world works becomes exponential. It grows. It has this kind of robust insight to all things. So anyone can start it. Anyone can move down that road. And then it moves to knowing God and growing in wisdom. And when you grow in wisdom, this is where you know God and you worship God. And he helps you see way beyond the material into people's hearts. And this starts in the book of Proverbs. And it helps you discern and find the deeper meaning that is below the surface. This has some Proverbs, and then it starts to pull from the other wisdom books. And then as we move towards the epitome, and we'll talk about those over the coming weeks, the epitome of wisdom is when we start to love like God. We actually are so intimate with God that we've been transformed by God, that we bring the greatest measure of wisdom in and through our lives that is possible. It is the kind of wisdom that in the New Testament, Paul says the Gentiles call foolishness. It's the kind of wisdom that you go, there's no way, unless I know God or understand who God is, that what you just did is the right way to do. Because here's how we think of the ultimate wisdom, where we love God so much that we start to love like God and see the world that way. This is where we're falling so close to God, and his Spirit has truly begun to transform you into being like him. In this, wisdom becomes the kind of wisdom that is spoken of in the New Testament, the kind of wisdom that Paul says is foolishness, that is sacrificial love. But not just any, the kind that came from the Creator, God, and King. For the God who has no servants per se, but rather is a servant. That is what the world calls foolishness and what God calls wise. That when the king, the one who has all the power, the one who has all the authority, he lays down his life in self-giving love. And so what we find is that the greatest way to bring about God's greatest in the world is when we exhibit the ultimate reality of God's love and we take up our cross every day. And we lay down our life every day. And we exhibit self-giving love. And we say, why do we do that? Because we love God so much. And he was a king that came to this world and said, I did not come for you to all serve me. That's why Caesar went all over the world during his reign. He would go into cities so that people would worship him. And if they didn't, they would make them. And then they would put them on crosses so they had fear. The kind of fear that made us so afraid we just don't want to mess up. And God comes in and he says, I'm gonna go into your cities, into your towns, into your villages, and I'm gonna bring healing. I mean, can you see the difference? In the time of Christ, there were moments in his life as a child where thousands of people on the roadways in and out of Jerusalem were hung to be crucified. That was a picture of what fear looked like. That was the picture of worldly wisdom. Jesus shows up, and instead of going into towns, grabbing people out of their houses and throwing them on crosses to be a display, a despicable display of weakness and to show how powerful the Romans were, Jesus comes into those who are dying and those who can't pay taxes and those who don't have food, and he gives them food. And then he goes on a cross that the Romans put him on. And to the Romans, that's failure. And sitting on a throne is wisdom. And then Jesus raises from the dead. And we go, the world just turned upside down. What we thought was wise is not wise. The best way to live in this world is to live the life and death that Jesus lived. And you do that in your marriages. And so anybody that actually gets this knows, like, do you want to be Rome in your marriage, or do you want to be Jesus? You know, because with Rome, might is right. I want to be right. You're wrong. I want you to not cheat on me because you're afraid. Whew. Man, I don't want that. I want you to love me so much that you honor me, that you're drawn near to me, not just so close that you kind of keep me under control, but beyond that. And Jesus shows up, and this is what turns people into light. We love sacrificially. That's the kind of wisdom that changes the world. The king comes and says, no. I'm gonna wash your feet. You don't wash mine. It's the ultimate reality of wisdom, and we're gonna look at that. So we're just gonna look real quickly, and honestly, I don't have much more. We're gonna look at these equations. Again, these equations from the book of Proverbs, they're remarkable and they're profound and they're life-changing. They're also gracious. A person who may have started loving God, but now just the dawning of their humility starts to draw and seek the answers for these humble questions. It draws them to engaging God's created world just because he's good and he's offered it. So you can tap into wisdom and it's all God's. And he goes, you can learn how to build stuff and do it really well. You don't want to know me? I don't know why you wouldn't. But it starts to move down this pathway of people coming into relationship with God and understanding the majesty and seeing the whole upside down kingdom. So in the book of Proverbs, we have equations. And there's kind of a partial wisdom and then a full in both. There's like two different types of equations. There's basic arithmetic and then there's variable equations. The basic arithmetic and variable equations. So the basic arithmetic is 2 + 2 is 4, right? This is where it's like, this is every action has an equal and opposite reaction. This is, you did that, this is why it happened, and you're a fool for not seeing how simple that is. But if you would learn, you wouldn't be a fool. But you still have to know 2 + 2 is 4. You still have to get it. So there's a couple examples. I'm gonna put one up before that. Just let me read one of them. This is a great example of 2 + 2 is 4. And this is the kind of stuff, again, if you just listen to this, like if you're in college, if you're a high school student, if you are a parent, you gotta understand that what you do leads to the outcome. You're responsible. It's just basic stuff that what you do, the world works a certain way. You got to learn how God made the world and apply it. So it says this in Proverbs 14, where there are no oxen, the manger is empty. One of the examples or translations says the manger's clean. Where there's no ox, the manger's clean. And it's empty. But from the strength of an ox comes an abundant harvest. You're kind of like, cool. Cool, Joel. The implications of this are profound. If you want to earn and you want to make a living and you want to have food and you want to have what you need to live, then you're gonna have an ox. You're going to basically have a dirty, messy stall. What does that mean for us? It means you gotta wake up early. It means you and your spouse, you got to figure out how to manage the kids. It means you got to go on trips and do work, and you might be out of town more than you thought. It means that you have to do things to teach your kids discipline so that, they become the people that they want to become. And that's messy and that's hard. And at night you're like, I want to go to bed, but you need to spend 25 minutes having a conversation. And not just when things go wrong, but man, if you want your kids to grow up, you gotta spend time with them. If you want to run a business, you're gonna have to work in such a way. You're gonna have to unpack the uncomfortable conversations, basically messy, because you can't make an omelet without breaking some eggs, said Joker in the original Batman. You just can't. You can't do it. But if you want a clean manger, fine. I meet people all the time. It's just like, I don't know why I don't have any money. I don't know why I did it. I don't know why. It's like, well, do you have a job? No. Let's take some time and process that. Now, I have nothing but mercy. I don't believe that people just always choose not to find work, and I believe we need to give mercy and all that. But so often, my goodness, people don't have what they want because they're not willing to get a messy stall to get a harvest. And they expect, and I'm sorry, millennials, we have these expectations that we're gonna turn 21, open the door, and the barn's gonna be full. I'm sorry, we do. Where is it? Where's mine? Where's this? Instead of, if you want, he who has ears, let him hear. A word to the wise is sufficient. Don't depend on someone else filling up the barn. Go to work. Work hard all the time. We did a whole series on how work is worship. See it different. 2 + 2 is 4. We don't have any savings. Why? Well, do you ever save any money? No. But we don't have any. I know, common sense. Not that common. Okay, let's look at another one. 2 + 2 is 4. This is great. It ties right into it. This is Proverbs 22. Do you see someone skilled in all their work? They will serve before kings. They will not serve before officials of low rank. Is this a promise that you're gonna have 1 million followers on Insta? No. It's not a promise of that. What it's telling you is that if you want to really make a difference, you have to get really good at something. Be skilled at something, right? The epitome of this example is, American Idol. I think I'm a good singer. Mom thinks I'm a good singer. And then you're not a good singer. And then you wonder why you didn't make it before the judges. That's what it is. This isn't saying that your goals should be to be before kings. This is saying that, you can get really skilled at something so that you could become anything you want to become. You can do it. You can get better. And if you're not, it's like, and the outcome isn't what you thought, back up. Have some self-perspective. Look at what you love, and then go put 100 hours into what you love in 1 year, perfecting it. And there's a rule of 100 hours. If you work for 100 hours on one particular thing in 1 year, you will be better at it than 95% of anyone else in the world. That's what it's saying. Gain skill. Are you good at it? No. But I would like to earn money doing it. You gotta be really good at it. 2 + 2 is 4. Now, here's the thing, you guys. That's why I'm called this equations. Because I want you to be able to look at your life and start looking at outcomes and looking at how you're spending your time and just think of it a little more practically. And God made the world. There's a grain that goes with the world. How does it work? How can we get that result? The responsibility's on me. When I tap into that responsibility, I'm tapping into just the beginning of Chokmah, which can change your life. Change your life. Bet on it. Here's another one, 2 + 2 is 4. Now this starts to get into loving God and having some judgment and seeing beyond. But I still think it's 2 + 2 is 4. This is a great one. Proverbs 29:19. Guys love to quote this one. Better to live in a desert than with a quarrelsome and nagging wife. Better to live in a desert. And so here you are, right? You're going, I'm moving to the desert. And so a lot of times we read that and we go, the guys are like, yeah, way better. Well, it's a proverb, okay? And Solomon is beyond what you think at face value. So you can flip this too. Better to live in the corner of a roof than to share a house with a quarrelsome husband. But let's just look at it even further. If wife is nagging, what's she nagging about? Why is she nagging? Is she just someone who nags? Maybe. But is this telling you, the solution when you get married is if you have a wife who nags, move out. Is that what the proverb is saying? That the answer is move out? No. Get divorced? No. What's it saying? You have a nagging spouse? You guys better deal with the nagging. So the 2 plus 2, the 4 is the nagging. The 2 plus 2 is, let's go figure out why we're nagging. What am I doing that's bothering you so much? How can I change? That when you start to get into proverbial wisdom, this right here is saying you need to have a lot of conversations about what your expectations are. Really calm, fruitful expectations so that you can move away from the nagging scenario that's going on, because who wants to live in a desert? It's also a desert for the wife that's in the corner of the roof. So the wisdom here is when someone's nagging, when you're in a relationship that matters to you, open it up, talk about it, figure out why so we can move away from that so we can live in an oasis together. Now, there's another level of wisdom to this. You meet someone young, if you're young and you're like on the prowl, whatever that is. Man, you know what we do? We cloak people in our hope-filled expectations. So here's a little word to the wise. If you have something in your gut that says, I don't want to live with that, don't. I tell couples that I'm doing marriage counseling with all the time, it freaks them out because they already got the date and they got the flower girl and the whole situation. And I tell them, you don't have to get married. And they're like, huh? And I'm like, yeah, you don't have to. But if you do, it means something. It means you have to have serious conversations. And it also means who you're marrying, they're not gonna be a totally different person in 6 months. So word to the wise, there you are. Don't marry someone that you're afraid it's gonna be a desert with. Don't think that because you get married, they're gonna suddenly change into a different person. That's foolishness. You didn't tie into Hokmah. Now you've already married. You better work on it. You better talk about it specifically. Don't move out. Don't end the relationship. Work on it. 2 plus 2 is 4. And then one more. These are the variable equations. So now we're getting into judgment. Now we're really getting into, God, you're starting to have a relationship with God. You understand that in the world, it's not just the grain of the way things work materially. There's a moral part and there is a judgment piece. And we're moving from basic proverbial ideas up into the next level of wisdom, which is my ability to see beyond what's at face value. And this is a variable equation, and you have to solve for X. This is where you have to take what you've got and then see what that other thing is and fill it in to get the appropriate outcome. Here's one, Proverbs 20:27. This says the human spirit, or a person's words is what that actually means. The human spirit, a person's words, is the lamp of the Lord that sheds light on one's inmost being. All right, so, this lines up with something Jesus said, from the heart, the mouth speaks. So someone that has wisdom does listen to what people say. They listen to what they say, and they're not judgmental, but they weigh it. And if they have a preponderance of negativity, then guess what? That means that person has negativity in their heart. If they're super critical all the time, that means they have some kind of critical nature in their heart. If they're really kind of in their jesting, they get super gross all the time and take it to an inappropriate level, that means they have something inappropriate in their heart. And you see, this is where like you might go, that seems simple, but you know what? Like when we're talking about building relationships and we're talking about what's going on in us, we first should go, okay, why am I saying all this stuff? I feel like it's inappropriate. You know, another way to describe the fear of the Lord is to shun evil. That's what he says. So it's not just like, oh, I care about God. Just the beginning of wisdom is to shun evil. So somebody starts to go, this isn't good. And they go, where's it coming from? My words are nasty. I'm critical all the time. I have a negative, whatever it is, the wise person knows that is an insight into that person's heart. That is something going on in them. There's more than meets the eye. There's a variable equation. And then one more, it says this. It says, this is where you really have to have sound judgment. Do not eat the food of a begrudging host. This is great. Do not crave his delicacies, for he's the kind of person who is always thinking about the cost. Eat and drink, he says to you, but his heart is not with you. And he says this phrase that's bizarre. You will vomit up the little you have eaten and will have wasted your very compliments or wasted your compliments. The judgment here is this. Here's the greatest example I can give you, is just because someone's offering you something doesn't mean you should take it until you understand the true motives of the offering. I remember, every year I sit with a couple in counseling, and one of the people is really concerned about the money that mom and dad are giving them. And it's like, why are you afraid of that? Like, why don't you let them bless you? And why don't you this? And then they start to unpack how they know there's strings attached. And they're afraid. And they're going, I don't want any money. Because I know that if we take it, they expect us to do this and this and this, and it's all manipulative. And so I tell them, don't take it. Don't take the money. You know, you become a slave to that, don't do it. Just because they're offering you those delicacies, there's something in their heart, they're looking for something else. You see, the begrudging host is someone who's going, I'm giving you all of this because I want you to do this. I want you to kind of talk to me this way or listen to me this way, or I have some other ulterior motive. So you go, I'm not falling into that trap ever. No way. And on the contrary, there are times when someone thinks that that's what is going to happen because that's how their parents are, but it's not how new parents are. And I say, be at peace, man. Let them bless you. They just want to give it to you. There's no strings attached. You got to work through that. You're afraid. But wisdom becomes this lens that we go, 2 + 2 is 4, man. What's going on here? The world works a certain way. And I'm going to see what it is, and I'm going to make the best decision. The reality of wisdom is that it's transforming us into the person of Christ. It's transformation. It's a bunch of things that we do and we employ, and as we employ them, what we do is we're becoming more like God. We're seeing thoughts and intentions of the heart. We're guarding our tongues. We're going in good places. We're starting to look and sound and behave like Jesus. So let's pray that as we continue to read the Proverbs, that the truth of it would transform us. Let's pray together. God, we thank you for this morning. And we thank you for the Proverbs. We thank you that you took a moment to put these instructions, these basic realities into this book, your words, so that we can look at them and go, okay, God, I want the good life. I want to make the right choice. I want to step in the right direction. God, help me to do things your way, and help me not to just kind of use your tools, but to fall in love with you, to shun evil, and to want to live righteously and good in the world. Help me to be the kind of person who just naturally over time speaks the things that God would say, or who holds back. Help us, God, to be intentional. Help us to take our lives seriously. Help us to take you seriously. Help us to fear you in that sense that we just want to be so close to you, that we honor you. And then we can make decisions today that we don't take parenting lightly, that we don't take working lightly and being married lightly and being a friend lightly, that we really take it seriously. And we don't allow ourselves to get caught into the trap of how did it end up here when it's just so simple. Bad company corrupts good character. Why am I around all of these people? You're choosing to be around them. Help us to see it that way. And enjoy your presence in our life as we persist with wisdom. Thank you for the Proverbs. Help us to grow in the grace and knowledge of you as we study them and read them this week. In Jesus' name, amen.